Welcome everyone. This is Cynthia with your daily tarot. Messages from Spirit, and this week we are using this wonderful high vibe deck called the Tarot of the Spirit. And I thank you so much for being here with me. I'm really enjoying doing these daily messages. Whenever you happen to find this video, trust that there is a message here for you. These messages are timeless. So take what resonates and leave the rest. And also feel free to trust your own intuition, your own inner guidance. And tune into the cards as we go through this session. Tune into the cards and see what you get. Okay, I'm here and go ahead and cut the deck. So I shall do so. Dun, 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 dun. 5 of Fire, the struggle. Look at that amazing card. Came in reverse. I'm hearing don't focus on the struggle. Could be miscommunication going on. Or it could be sort of like the first... You know, sometimes when you start something, it's not so much that you run into like a roadblock or a challenge, but it's just like, oh, that thing didn't go. It almost feels more of like a minor annoyance. But if we're mentally, emotionally in like a sensitive, triggering, heightened sensitivity state, sometimes we can literally make a mountain out of a molehill. Or we can get ourselves stuck and be like, God, you know, that always worked before. How come it's not working? And then like we'll overanalyze it to death, trying to figure something out. Or, you know, we have something already that we don't really like and that we kind of tolerate. And then the next thing you know, we get a communication or we get news, or, you know, we're in a meeting or we're with other people and we find out, oh, here's more of what you don't really like, but you kind of have to. So, I mean, like something like that could be like a work situation or a project you're working on or something with other people. I'm definitely getting involvement from more than just you energy. That doesn't necessarily have to be the case for everybody. It could definitely be more of like an internal struggle, right? But even the internal struggle can be reflected externally with something that we might be annoyed with or triggered by or have difficulty with, or a miscommunication that we're involved in or something like that. And likewise, what's going on externally, it's not what's going on in a situation or a circumstance that's necessarily reflective of our internal vibration, but how we feel about it and how we interact with it or relate to it, that's our internal vibration. So the circumstance merely just called to the surface. Like a fight doesn't have to be a fight. And it also doesn't have to be a capitulation. My goodness, my... Yeah. It's really that energy of there's an opportunity to recognize where something can shift or change. 5 is a number actually of freedom. Freedom that comes from working with the things that are constantly changing and transitioning in our lives. There's always an opportunity to do something different. And so it's almost like this is bringing you the opportunity to not focus on the struggle, not focus on the fight. It doesn't mean that you have to give up. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to change your mind or change how you feel, but you do have to acknowledge to yourself what it is that you're thinking and feeling and how best to work with the energy around you in order to find a resolution, in order to make what's turned into a big deal but really isn't a big deal, less of a big deal. And it does feel like this could be difficult if other people are involved, or these sort of shadowy figures that I'm seeing here, they could be like memories. So triggering memories or thoughts and ideas that you have that you're conflicted about, like which one is right, or, what should you do, or something of that nature. In one sense, coming up reverse like this, the 5 of fire, that struggle, it could be talking about making something harder for yourself than it has to be because you need to take pause for a minute and look at how you're responding to a situation or a circumstance or a trigger. How are you relating to it? That's the key thing, right? In another sense, are you avoiding something? Because sometimes, and again, that's where like the capitulation or the ignorance or something like that kind of compounds our difficulty, because we're sweeping it under the rug, because we're trying to ignore it, because we're trying to not engage. You know what I mean? And it's like, well, there are other ways to be not attached to something. Even not engaging is still engaging, right? So there are ways to be unattached to results, to situations, to opinions, to get a broader perspective of something, not so that we can see somebody else's point of view and change our mind and blah, 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 and compromise and all of this stuff. That's not necessarily the case. But when we can take a step back and see the forest instead of just looking at that one tree, then we've shifted our perspective and we recognize, like, okay, is that really necessary? Do I have to be right? Am I trying to prove that I'm right for the sake of being right? What if they're right too? What if we're both right? What if we're both wrong? You know what I mean? So it's like taking a different view of a situation, not to give up on how you feel, not to give up necessarily on what you're, thinking or believing to be true, but just recognizing that you only have your experience. You only have your space. And while some things are important and meaningful, if it's work related, yeah, certain project or a certain thing could be extremely important, or if it's family related or something like that. It's perfectly understandable, but it doesn't have to stay a problem. And the best way for it to not stay a problem is to acknowledge that it's a reality without making it a problem. That's where the solution comes in. So, yes, that's there, but are we going to make it a huge issue, the fact that it's there? Or are we just going to say, okay, that's there. What's the next step in dealing with it? And do we have to go into the rights and wrongs of why that's there and how it got there and whose fault is it and blah, 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 blah. The big picture is, and we kind of need to have that trust of our confidence in ourselves, confidence in our communication skills, maybe our boundaries, or trusting that if a conversation needs to happen, if everybody's learning a lesson, it's not really going to escape them. The seeds are being planted by spirit via this experience. So when you tune into that broader view without being too attached closely to the situation, just acknowledging it, acknowledging how you feel and what you think and your perspective, but also acknowledging that other people's feelings, thoughts, and perspectives might differ from yours. Whether or not you agree with them is fine. But it's like not resisting where everything is, just kind of seeing it for what it is, as it is, and then choosing your own actions from there. And when you're trying to work together on a team, or whether you're trying to work in relationship to a situation or other people, it's a lot easier to see what a solution is if we're not trying to force everybody to look at the same thing we're looking at. You know what I mean? So I'm really feeling this 5 of Wands, this 5 of Fire, this struggle is like, we don't have to make it harder than it already is. Acknowledging, taking a step back and being careful in how we're communicating and relating, and sort of trusting ourselves and our boundaries to be able to communicate what needs to be communicated and when it needs to be communicated. So it's like mature expressions, mature behaviors, being calm and centered, and taking that unattached. You can engage with it and still be unattached.